Alright, now let's start creating visuals, okay? Now, the thing in Power BI is the following. If we select any kind of, actually from column, from our dataset we have, then the default is that Power BI would always convert string values into a table. So the default visual for a string value would be a table, and the default visual for any kind of these sum fields, so sum simply refers to a numerical values, would be a bar chart. Now, these sum values simply mean that Power BI is summing up, for instance here the profit. It simply creates a sum for the whole profit column, which we could use, but it's always common practice and always a good idea to create your own sums and own formulas. But we could use them, and if I click on region, for instance, which is a string value here, then I get my regions, east, north, south, and west. And if I click on profit now, for instance, then I can see that my profit is automatically calculated for each of the regions for my table. Okay, so this is basically my first visual, which is the table. And I could also, beside profit, I could also use the revenue itself. So click on revenue, and then I also see my revenue column here. So this is one option. So simply click on it here. I can deselect it to get rid of it. The other option would be that I use this and simply drag and drop it into my values here. Okay, so if I want to see it before profit, I drag it here, drag and drop it here, then I can see my revenue column in here. Okay, so these are the options I have, and of course I could also drag it here, then I have it there as well. Okay, so these are visualization options for a table, and the default table style in Power BI is this one with also this kind of well, green or turquoise color. If you do not like it, you could simply go to this format options and then can decide, okay, what should your table look like. Okay, you have many options here. In general, you'll find the X and the Y position. This is simply if you want to actually put your table somewhere else, but you can see that if I drag it here, then my X and my Y position change. I can decide the width and the height, so this is something you can decide up here, but because the visual is floating, you could actually drag and drop and play around with it here in the report view itself, so you do not need this. You can change the table style. So the style is currently the default one. Actually, I always use none, which looks like that, and then you can decide what you want to style your table. But you also have other options like minimal, and I can just that you see what it looks like here. Select it again. So in case you click on the canvas, then it's deselected, so you do not see it anymore. So you simply need to click on it, and then you go to the paintbrush here, and then you can say, okay, table style instead of minimal, I want bold headers. It would look like this. I could say alternating rows would like that, or contrast items. So simply that you see which are actually styles which are available, and you can change this color. So that's what we do in a few seconds, because I actually do not like this default well, green color if you want in Power BI. But you have these different kinds of options how you can actually play around and decide what kind of style you want to have. So for now I select none, and then you have actually here the grid. So here you can decide actually do you want to have vertical grid or not. In this case currently we have none, so I click on, and now you can see we have this vertical grid here. And if I want to change the color and I want to do it, I want to, let's use a black color in here, but also for the horizontal grid. So choose black colors, and then you have these black colors in here. Okay, and then here you can decide, okay, about the thickness of the borders you want, or the grids, and the outline color here, for instance, also change to black, and I see that everything looks black now. You can also decide what kind of border width and so on I want to have. The text size, if you want to increase the text, you could do it in your table, right? So make it a little bit bigger. So I can drop that so you can see it better. Place it in here. You can play around with that. Again, select it, go to format, and then you can also decide when you want. What do you want to show, a title or not? A background here. So if you click on background on, then you could also decide what kind of background color you want to have. Make blue, for instance. Set transparency again. Whatever you want to format actually your table on, you can do it here. And yeah, have these options here. You can see, do I want to see totals or not? If I don't want to see the totals, simply put them off. The background color of the totals. So there are a lot of options, and as always, If you have changed too much and you want to go back, then simply click on refer to default. But then, of course, everything from the total section here would be removed. So any kind of personal style or customized style you have used would be removed. The formatting here as well, you have options, font color and background color for regions, and I encourage you to play around with them simply to find out what suits your needs, so what looks best for you on your personal style, and you could do that and change it here. Okay, borders as well. Border would be for the whole visual. So if I click on border on, then you can see that now I have this black border here around my visual. If you want to have one, I can select it here. If I do not want to have one, simply click on off. So there are a lot of options you can style your table, and as I said, I encourage you to play around with them and find out what suits your needs. Okay. Now, as I said before, if I click on a numerical value, like for instance profit, then what I would get is a default style would be a visual which is a bar chart. So I click on profit, for instance, here, profit again, and you can see that I have this bar chart here. And if I now want to see it side with regions, then for instance I click on region, but we already have region. Now I could say I want to see the cities, click on city, and then you can see that I get my cities appear and I get the profit by city. Okay, so this is something I can do. Again, I simply clicked on it. So in case, you could also drop it, of course, here in the axis or in the legend. If you want to see the legend as well, then you could simply drag city to legend, and it would look like that. So a little bit different, but you would have the legend. In this case, I simply drag it to axis here. It looks better for me. And what I could do now, again, is some styling. So again, go to this format option, then you can say, okay, what do you want to change? For instance, the data colors. I do not want to have this. You could also change only certain ones of them if you simply click on show all, and then you can decide which color you want to give to which city in here. If I say, okay, the default color, simply switch this default color, and I say, okay, let's say I want to have this style in here, and you can see that now I have, at least for my personal view, a much better looking chart. And what I also want is, I don't want to see this header here, actually, so the title, so get rid of the title. And then, for instance, what else? I want to see data labels, because currently now I don't know what this is actually. Click on the data labels, and you can see the data labels are visual here. And here you could also decide where do you want to display them and how they should be displayed. For instance, you have huge numbers here, for instance, millions or billions. Then you could also use a display auto here and select, okay, how do you want to display them in thousands. So 1,000 would be a K, of course, and other kinds of options you have here. And the orientation, so for instance, you want to see them vertically, you can see that now they're vertically distorted, and the position itself, so inside end, I like that. Actually, here you can't see it because it's simply too small, but here you would see them inside end. Here, as I said, if the visual itself is too small, then of course it's not visible. What you could do is actually you could change the axis if you want to do this. You could make the visual bigger. That sometimes helps, as you can see here. Yeah, or change the axis. So the x-axis, you have it here. And you could also set where you want to start and where you want to end if you want to do this, and it's also possible for the y-axis. Okay, so simply change the axis. It doesn't make sense because these are simply names. Okay, but if you have numerical values on the x and the y-axis, you can change them. All right, and you could add an image if you want. You could play around with the background again. You can play around with the border, so you have different kinds of options here. But this is simply it. Okay, so that's how easy it actually is to create a chart, a visual, without any calculation. So simply you have your prepared Excel file in this case, or data source, doesn't matter what it is. Could also be some file from a database, an Access database, SQL Server database, whatever it is. But you have your table, and in case the table is already done, so there are no other kinds of transformation steps, and you do not need to calculate anything, and simply click on a few, make a few clicks here, or select the visual you want to have, and drop it on the canvas, and you have your dashboard. So it's really easy, especially if you have you worked with Microsoft products before. Then a lot of things are really familiar. But as I said, Power BI is what itself it calls itself a self-service BI. So the main goal is that Power BI is really available for every user. So you do not have to be any kind of developer or any kind of computer programmer. So Power BI is really open for everyone. Okay, So the idea is that everyone can create his or her own reports and visualize his or her findings. And this is something which I personally think is really possible in Power BI because it is really easy. What else can I create? Well, I can create simply a card. So if I click on my card here, this will be the other option. So click on the card itself and then decide, okay, for this card, I want to see my revenue here. Then I see now I have 50,000 in revenue. And if I want to, well, category labels off, I could get rid of the revenue if I want to do it. Click on this and I don't see the revenue anymore from data label itself. You can see the display auto, so if I change that and say none, then I see that it's actually 14,850 in total for the revenue. And if I want to change a visual, as I said, the default visual, if I click on a string value here, I get my table. If I click on a numerical value, I would get a bar chart. But I could always change the visual itself. So if I do not want to see this as a table, I could simply say, okay, instead of a table, show me a donut chart. And I click on the donut chart item. I select, at first, of course, I need to select my visual. I click on the donut chart icon, and I see my donut chart, okay? So that's how easy it is actually to change a chart type. If I don't want to see a donut chart, but I want to see a pie, click on the pie, and you get the pie. And again, you could play around with the colors. So in case you do not like the default colors, play around with them. What you could also do, of course, is the label style. So currently I only see the regions, but here I display the profit by regions, right? And this is not helpful because what I need to see is, of course, either a percentage figure or the value itself or both. And I could say, instead of the category alone, I want to see the category and the data value, for instance. Okay, then I see it currently in thousands. So this, of course, I do not want to see it in thousands because the values are too small. So select that. And now I get the values here. So in case instead of this, I also want to have percentage values. I could say all detail labels, and then I would also see the percentage. Okay, so 14.63 and so on, 70. Okay, so I can select this, and as I said before, can play around with the colors. So data colors, you can see them here, and you can decide which colors you want to see. In this case, West, of course, is negative profit, and that's the reason why it is not shown here, just in case you ask, because it's yellow. It's a negative profit. Okay. All right, and what I also could do, of course, here I could use my revenue. So in this case, I want to see the profit itself. So I could say, okay, I want to have here my card, and I want to see the profit. And instead of the label, don't show me the label. So let's say the data label itself, and the label itself is right. Just select it. Would wrap background. Okay. Let me make this a little bit smaller, like that. Okay, category label. Now let's select off. And what I could do now is I could simply use that and put it in here. So place it in here, and let's select that. And you can see that now I get my label in here. And that now this, what we already know from PowerPoint, comes really handy because I could select that. I could say send backward and can say send to back. And if I do that and I select this and also bring that to front, say bring to front, then now I have not the option to select it. So basically, if I do not like to see it, but I could use it for filtering, okay? And this is a great thing because in Power BI, every filter, oh, let's create, actually, before we filter, let's do another kind of map, okay? We could create a map, and I have my cities here. And this is something, it depends whether Power BI is recognizing that a city is really a city, because the default would be then Power BI would create a map. So if I select it, and you can see, okay, it visualized it, so it recognized my city names as cities, and it gave me a card, so actually a map. In this case, the map is in German because this is probably with my computer settings, because I have a German Windows here. But what it recognized was actually, if I scroll in, can zoom in simply with the mouse wheel, and I see that here Deutschland means Germany, by the way, and I can see all my cities highlighted. So actually, Power BI was able to recognize that the city is a city. Whenever it is not able to recognize that, what you could do is you could select the value here, and then you could go to modeling, and then you can say the data category. And if you then, instead of uncategorized, you should then choose city, okay? So you click on the little down arrow here, and then you can say it's a city, okay? And then the data would be categorized, and then it should find actually you can see that this little, well, world icon or globe icon, you can see it here, that now the city field is recognized as a city, so a geographical field, and you could place now, if you place it now on the map or on the canvas, you simply click on that, then it would create a map as a default. So for now, my cities are highlighted here with the small dots, but nothing else, okay? And what I could do is, if I select it here, I have, for instance, a size field and a color saturation. And by the way, instead of the city name, so oftentimes the city names could be problematic because there are cities which appear more often in the world, right? So there might be Hamburg, for instance, and I'm sure that besides German Hamburg, there are other kinds of cities. So that might cause issues. So that's why there's always a latitude and longitude field. So if you have these latitude and longitude fields for a city, you can also place them here. And it's really easy to find, so it's simply Google it, and for each city or each location, you actually get the latitude and longitude. Okay, so you could create a table and then use this table to use these fields to create your map. So that's also possible. Now I have the size and the color saturation, and now I could say, okay, for the size, because currently all the bubbles have the same size, right? So I can say, okay, instead of having them all the same size, I'm using my revenue, and I drag this revenue to size. And what you can see now is that the bubbles, or the size of the bubble, has changed. So the biggest bubble itself here in Berlin creates the highest revenue, which is 4,500 in this case, and so on. So the small one here in Hamburg, for instance, is 750. Okay. And what you could also use, of course, is the saturation. So if in case you want to bring in a third dimension, so currently we have the cities and we have the revenue, and now we also want to visualize within this graph, in this map, what's the profit. And then we could also use the profit and put it into color saturation, and then you can see that now certain areas are stronger from a saturation effect. For instance, Nuremberg, which is the strongest, which has the highest profit. Okay, Berlin has strong revenue, but actually not that high a profit, and we could also visualize it in here. And if you want to change things here, what you have is you have the bubbles itself. You can increase the size of the bubbles. You could also, of course, change the map style. So currently we have road, aerial, so different kinds of other kinds of maps, dark map, in case you like this more, and also the light map, the grayscale, and the map style, which is here the road. So these are the default map styles you have in Power BI, but you could also import other kinds of map visuals. We'll take a look at this later on, okay? But this is what you can do, and of course then we also could change the color. Here you have data colors, and this is something I like to do actually, because I do not like this default color as I told you before. And now I say, okay, I want to have these blue colors in here, and for the small, let's say a lighter blue like that. Okay, and now we have this visual here. Okay, so now we have a map, and what else kind of visuals? Well, as I said before, we have all these different kinds of visuals, and we simply create them by dragging and dropping them. So in case I want to create, for instance, I have this waterfall chart, so click on the waterfall chart, and I say, okay, I have different kinds of products in here. Let's click on the product, and I also have different kinds of profits for my products, and then you can see here, that's what it looks like. This is my waterfall chart. So in this case, I'm making profits for all my products, but the biggest profit obviously will be Samsung Galaxy. Let me change this, because here we do not have any negative values as far as I can see. So let's get rid of the product, and instead of the product, we will use the city. Okay, so I click on the city, and here you can see that in Frankfurt and Kiel, which are two German cities, I actually make a negative profit. So in this case, in Frankfurt, it's minus 350, which is my biggest drawdown, and Kiel, it's a little bit smaller, it's minus 200. Okay, and in Nuremberg, which is, by the way, the greatest city, so whenever you travel to Germany, come to Nuremberg, you're welcome. And then, of course, you can see that here we make the biggest profit. And this is the total, and that's how easy it is actually to create a waterfall chart. Okay, so, and as always, if you do not like the default style, which I would understand, of course, then you go to this format window, and then you can decide, okay, what actually do you want to see, what actually you want to change. You want to see the data labels, click on the data labels, and you can see it here. Do we want to change the sentiment colors? So for instance, the last one at least, let's say we make it a little bit darker. We have this dark here instead of this green value in here. Okay, and this would simply mean we have our waterfall chart. Now let me get rid of this and let me create a final chart in here. Let's say we want to make a tree map because it's also very common to use tree maps. So what I could do is simply I click on my tree map style, or let's say I click on, let's profit by let's make product and profit. I have, as I said, here my default, which is a map, which is a table, and now I want to see a tree map. So what I could do is simply go in here and select tree map and change my visual to a tree map. You can see it here. Now I have my tree map, make it a little bit bigger, and I have my tree map here. And I could say, okay, I also want to see, of course, the labels. So show me actually the profits, and I see the profits here as well. And let me get rid of the title because it's something I don't need here. Okay, cool. So this is actually how easy it is. That's why it's called the easy way from the Excel file to create visuals in Power BI. So it's really, really simple. Not much to do. And in case you want to create a filter, there are actually two options. But let's say at first I create a filter like this. So create my filter here, and I say a filter by product. So click on product, and I have my filter here. This is my filter. And now I could select any kind of my products, for instance Google Pixel, click on that, and you can see that all my visuals are filtered by Google Pixel. Okay, so this is one option. I could select, of course, several of them. Simply hold the control key and select whatever you want to like to show. In case you want to get rid of it, simply uncheck it and you see the default. So actually everything again. Okay, so this is one option to create a filter. Simply use the filter icon. But the great thing in Power BI, at least from my point of view, is that actually you could click on any visual and you get a filter. So if I want to see, for instance, all the data for Nuremberg, I click here on Nuremberg and everything is filtered for Nuremberg. This is awesome. This is what I personally really like in Power BI, this kind of options. If I click on South and here, then everything is filtered to South. And you can see also my cards here are filtered only to the profit of South, right? And here this as well. If I click on iPhone, I only see data for iPhone. And you can see that currently the default thing is that some things are grayed out, and you can only see this small icon here in Nuremberg, but the total value is grayed out. And also in this chart, this is something I actually do not like. What I want to see is I only want to see the filtered data. So how can I do this? Well, what I could do is I select the visual I have, and then I go to format, and I can select edit interactions. And here you can see if I click that, I still have this one selected, and I can see now the interactions I have for all the others. So if I want, the default is only see the part and simply gray out the rest, but I could use the filter option here. Or I can select I don't want to filter anything. So if I filter something on that, then now the waterfall chart wouldn't be filtered. This chart, however, would be filtered totally, and this would be filtered the way it was filtered before. Okay, now let's see what it looks like. So if I go out of this, and now I select Samsung Galaxy, and you can see the difference is, in this case, you don't see it here. Maybe I should change this to that. Let's make it another way, then you can see better what I mean. I select this here, and I select the chart, filter chart here. Okay, and deselect it, and now I click on Samsung Galaxy, and what you see is now this chart is available and the total, but all the data is only for Samsung Galaxy. And here you can still see the grayed out thing. Okay, this is a default behavior, and if I do actually only want to see, in this case, Nuremberg, Hamburg, and Berlin, what I could do is, again, I click on my edit interactions and I select I want to filter this whole thing, and you can see that's what the chart changes. So actually everything where Samsung Galaxy was not sold is completely out of the view. Okay, you can achieve this by simply selecting this filter. And of course, you would have to do that for all the other visuals as well. So if you want to select this visual here, and you also want to have this filter out option, then of course you need to select all the filters for the other elements here. And if you're done, simply uncheck the edit interactions and the default, and you have your new kind of filtering. So this is a great thing. And as I said, everything is filtered. You can filter everything. So you can create your filter here, but you can click on any visual and everything is filtered. I also could click on the map, click on Berlin here, for instance, and everything is filtered by Berlin. So that's awesome. This is really, really cool. And as I said, really, really easy to handle. So I think now it's your turn. Load the data in case you haven't done it so far, and create your visuals, play around with it, format it in the style you like, and after that, come back to the next video. Until then, best.